what has happened is with President Saleh's departure after he was attacked and wounded, and more seriously wounded than originally thought, he's now in Saudi Arabia. And so the key question now, and the key variable is, does he return? And what is emerging in Yemen in his absence? And the reality is there are some political machinations in Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, but really what this has unleashed is a lot of the undercurrent of tribal warfare and the power dynamics that President Saleh was sitting on top of. And so in many ways you now have a real down and dirty power struggle in Yemen among tribal factions, among military factions, with his son still in country. And so I think a real pivotal moment and question will be, does President Saleh try to return? And what does that mean for not only the popular movement, which started the protests, but also the power dynamics and the battle for power that's underway right now in Yemen?
I want to talk about the terror risk in Yemen in just a minute. But first of all, with President Saleh in Saudi Arabia, is there a chance that Saudi doesn't want him to go back? I mean, are they a player here in terms of convincing him one way or another, you're not going back?
Absolutely. Saudi Arabia is a key player, if not the most important international player in the context of what happens inside Yemen. They not only have influence over Saleh, he's not only in Saudi Arabia, but they've paid a good bit of his budget over the years, a great deal of influence personally with him and his family, but also they have contacts with the tribal groups in Yemen itself. There's a lot of cross-border historical relationships there. So Saudi Arabia has a great deal of influence here. That said, what's interesting to me about how President Saleh departed was he was attacked. He was attacked during Friday services while praying in a mosque. An imam was killed, others were killed as a part of this. The Saudis, I think, don't like that. They don't like the fact that he was forced out, not because he had signed a deal, but because he was actually attacked, and also attacked during prayers. And so I think they've taken offense to this, and I think they're going to be less willing now to restrain President Saleh if President Saleh decides to return. I think the attack itself has put this in a different framework for the Saudis. The other interesting thing is for the United States, I think how this is all unfolded starts to reshape the dynamics a bit. We're not just talking about protesters who've now toppled a dictator like we saw in Egypt or in Tunisia. This is a real power struggle within Yemen. And I think it's a legitimate question to ask as to whether or not, backing other elements of that power dynamic or the tribal elements in Yemen actually makes sense. President Saleh, like it or not, is the elected leader of Yemen. It was a flawed but considered legitimate election the last time he was elected. So in some sense, this is the elected leader of Yemen. There's now a power struggle in Yemen. What does the United States do?
Yeah, can we throw in with either side, or what do we do?
And is our policy of abandoning an ally like Saleh, does that make sense in this current context? It may have made sense 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure it makes sense now. So we're going to have to watch this very carefully. The Saudis will be the trigger, I think, and the United States will take some lead from the Saudis, but we may see a break between the United States and Saudi Arabia depending on what President Saleh decides to do.